Ottilie and I are based in London, and we work within an Arup practice, venues design. It doesn't mean that we necessarily design venues, but we do work with architects, clients, and developers, a really broad range of clients, to work with them to design cultural venues and also cultural strategies for built environment and public realm. So we're really lucky, we're exposed to an awful lot of interesting places and people. And within that, a major focus is around experience. It's been mentioned a number of times, so I've had some really interesting chats already with people talking about experiential design. And that's about really ensuring the value of the output to those who become audiences, the communities in which those values or strategies exist, but also the staff and operators who work in those venues and institutions also. So we spend a lot of time with our clients for the entire life cycle of projects, right from the initial ideas through to opening and operation, if we can possibly do that. And those are always the most fruitful relationships, is figuring out how those physical spaces actually function a year, 5 years, 10 years after they're open to the public.
Absolutely, and I think that one of the amazing benefits that we have from working in an organisation that promotes total design for our built and natural environments is the chance to learn from different practices in business. So Arup has done a lot of work on digital twins, which is what we're going to talk about today. But I didn't get interested in this topic until I had a bad experience going to a very boring play in the West End, and came in and complained about it the next day, as I'm doing to you now. It's not, God, it was, I always buy cheap seats and sit right up high in the gods. And I said, oh, it was dreadful, I just got so sleepy, it was so dull. And someone said, no, the play might have been dull, but you got sleepy because there was too much CO2 up in the top because there was no ventilation. So, oh, well, that's interesting, because that was, it wasn't a great impact on me, but it was a really strong impact. So I wanted to start having a think about how, as this technology becomes more available, and how as these things become more available, what that means for the cultural sector and for cultural buildings, because they are special, and I mean that emotionally, but also I think that the development cycles are a little bit different. We'll come on to that. But one thing that we feel is really important, to Bruce's point on experience and all the different points that have been raised today, is we believe really strongly that as digital twins are adopted by the arts and culture sector, you have to look at the whole building. There's lots of really amazing pieces of work that have happened already. And someone might put their hand up later and say, yeah, no, I've already done that, you're wrong. But generally they look at specific spaces, very high use spaces, and actually your audience experiences your whole building, and the shop and the cafe, the car park and the entrance, the toilets. And so it's really important, as this technology becomes more available to us, that we understand how we embed experience design within that and understand the human experience within these spaces. So
often our starting point may be around from an MEP perspective, air circulation, heating, energy consumption. But for a lot of you may not be running your BMS, your business, your building management system, but you will be interested in how the building is performing and how people are coming in and what's happening once they're in there. So the provocation here is, what if you could understand your venue in real time? What is it that you would want to know about that space, and why? What's your motivation? Is it about audiences? Is it about staff? Is it about capacity? Is it about programming? I'm going to hand to you to
audio poll. I will just say very quickly, this is some videos from some software that Arup uses called Mass Motion, and as a quick aside, my friend Lachlan develops this, and his mum had absolutely no idea what he did until it was shown in an exhibition in a museum, and now she very proudly tells everybody, my son controls the JB people. So we want to, first of all, we want to hear from you. So you're all experts at this point. Please take out your phones and scan the code.
So this is a bit of a sort of live dialogue that's about to take place here. This isn't pre-prepared. We want to see what your response sounds. Go back, go back. If we can't go back, go to menti.com, thank you.
And the code is 43185447.
So we're interested in what you're going to throw in here, because we don't know. We haven't got any plants and images. And we genuinely are interested in what you all might want to know about data, digital twins.
And also, quite apart from that, there's something that I think is really important in this. You do not have to be a digital expert or know how to develop a digital tool to engage with them. There's something that a practitioner called Uma Murphy said about AI, and anybody's interested in AI museums, you need to look her up because she does incredible work. But she said you do not have to be an expert in AI or anything digital. You just have to be an expert in your organisation and your purpose.
These are already great. I just glanced at the where do people get lost.
How do people navigate your building?
Oh, actually, getting lost and confused is quite a big one. Well, it's come up a few times, which is super interesting. This cafe running low on sandwiches. I mean, so what's interesting about this already is actually the breadth of the questions that are being asked. So it's not one sort of specialist area. There are lots of points around experience and feelings, but there are also lots of super practical questions being asked, which is exactly what we're interested in. That combination of, okay, how hot is it in here? And will it get hotter as there are 300 people in there? And how do we moderate it so everyone remains comfortable for an hour? Versus, what makes you angry?
Right. What drains people of their energy? This is amazing. For everyone that's asking, where do people get lost? There's something you have to look up. This has just come out. University College London, the UK, have just done a study called 100 Minds in Motion, where 100 people were sent through an art gallery environment to track how they move and what drives their decisions about, what directions they take and how they move in the space. It's one of the first ever studies, if not the first ever study, of how crowds really move. We think we have a lot of information about this, but actually going back, quite a lot of the studies are based on individuals or based on aggregate data. So this is something that we're really only just starting to figure out properly. And the webinar's just been published, so 100 Minds in Motion.
But I did really want to pause on what are your secrets and create soul posted. But I think what's interesting about the range also of these questions is that if we had the answer to all of this, it would influence all sorts of things, all sorts of layers of operations, from programming, aspirations for creating audience experience to different audience typologies, but then also some really practical questions around stock levels, lighting levels. So we go from experiential to technical, spatial and programming, which is really interesting.
What do people need in these spaces? What do you as operators need in these spaces? This is great, thank you for your generosity. Can we please move back to the slides?
We're going to mine these later though, thank you. And then we're going to find out the secret.
Okay, one more piece of interaction. Who has used a digital twin? A couple of people. Who knows if they've got a digital twin? Who's heard of a digital twin?
Of yourself?
Lots of people. Of your either. Go to the doctor way. Okay, so lots of people have heard of it. Okay, fantastic. So we won't spend too much time here. But digital twins are a piece of technology that first mentioned in 2007. The prediction was that by 2030 everybody would be using them, and COVID kind of kiboshed that a little bit. So add another 5 years onto that. But this is one I think, returning to this idea of cultural buildings are special. As we've heard today, everybody had to dig in and commit to digital in the sector in a way that actually lots of other things were slowing down. So we're now in this really interesting place where virtual museums have existed for something like 70 years. Really, digital twins have been around for 14, 15? No, 18, I can count. And there's lots of different kinds. So lots of people have partial digital twins. You might have more than one partial digital twin knocking about. What good looks like in this space is what can be referred to as a clone digital twin or an augmented digital twin, where you have multiple data sources interacting in real time in an environment that has a physical replication of a physical asset, and that allows you to visualize what's going on, to analyze what's going on, to extrapolate information, and to conduct things like predictive maintenance, and ultimately inform your strategy based on how people are actually behaving. And ultimately, this can improve decision making.
So a lot of conversations that we have with clients. So we may work on brand new buildings that are it's being designed from scratch for the first time. We also work with a lot of regeneration and renewal and refurbishment. And those existing clients in particular are really trying to balance a lot of complex needs that I'm sure many of you can relate to at the moment. So energy costs and really understanding on a very basic level what it costs to open the doors and turn the lights on, and balancing that with changing audience behaviours. So the greater the information, the more information we get about our clients' buildings in the physical and technical sense, and audience behaviours and programme aspirations, the more likely we are to take data and get insights. And of course, there's a really pertinent difference between data and insight. One is just sort of numbers and figures, and the other is what does that actually mean? And operators and clients really understand what that data translates to in terms of revenue, in terms of your ability to stay open, and a shift in opening patterns. And so this lists some of the areas that we focus on with our clients. So third space opportunities, these are non-ticketed areas, and opportunities to welcome audiences in, to spend time in those spaces in a really sort of flexible way, to promote a sense of community, to address loneliness, performs all sorts of functions, and relates to social prescribing, and those spaces as part of people's day-to-day lives and improving well-being and mobility. Then we go to more practical things like energy consumption, which is a huge challenge for lots of operators. Sleepy nurses, as Ottilie mentioned, and bathroom usage, bottlenecks. So some of these are about maintaining facilities. What's your asset you're going to look like? How often are you going to refurbish these things? Some of it's about that kind of financial and operational planning for the future. Some of it is about immediately how do you manage bottlenecks, popular exhibitions, what's selling, what's not, how do you balance out your programme? And sorry, again, predictive, it's repeating that slightly. But it's really helping, helping operators find balance so that they can operate in the most sustainable way. And part of that is environmental, but part of it's economic and social as well. Throwing lots of things in at the same time.
Yeah. I think we're just was that the 5-minute warning? Okay, we'll speed up. So there is lots of knowledge out there that can be borrowed from other sectors, and I'm hoping that my colleague Kelvin is going to wave to everybody. This is a digital twin of the Hague, but he knows lots about. And please wave. Thank you. If anybody wants over a drink, we can talk more about what good looks like in terms of really significant modelling and real-time data flow. This was built with the City Mall in The Hague to understand how to improve the occupancy experience, and they also managed to save 39% on the energy consumption. But for this audience in particular, I think every stage of the twin process can lead to valuable insight generation. Actually, the tool that we were hearing about just before is already kind of a wealth of information that can be used. And as you start moving into talking about how you want that to influence future conversations, that's going to be really exciting. One really tangible example really quickly, there's a company in London called Preview who have created lots of scans like this of different performing arts venues, and they now have such an incredible library of assets that they've been able to develop an add-on to ticketing systems. This does something very similar to what the airlines do, that says this is your current ticket and this is your view based on what you'll see, just extracting it from the model. If you want to pay this much more, you can have this much nicer view. So there's different things as things, that's not involving data coming into it yet, that's just taking the model. So there's lots and lots of different ways you can do this, but moving through very quickly.
We're going to move super quickly. I would skip this bit, go to the next slide. I really want to squeeze in Charlotte at the end.
Okay, here we go. Right, so we did a pilot, which we're actually still doing, with our lovely client at King's Space, which is a beautiful concert hall in London, if anybody's been. We wanted to go back to first principles as part of understanding how you make is technology useful to arts and culture buildings and operators? And so first thing we did was start having to dig around about what data is there. We learned lots of lessons about what's there, what's impassable, and what's actually quite hard to get hold of. But one of the things that we learned really clearly was that actually there is a wealth of information coming out of both buildings and audiences all the time. Whether it's the right information is one question, but also how you get hold of that and use what you've got is another question. So this shows, just to give you an example, a week's worth of data on energy consumption. And so I highlighted at the top where you would think the building would be really busy because people are coming in and dining and seeing a concert, but actually there's energy consumption throughout the day. So you can start by even just drawing out basic information, not having to touch on modelling or any of that, to ask really interesting questions about how your space is being used. If it is really busy and you are already doing a lot of energy consumption in the middle of the day, should you be looking at the space offering? Is that something, are there new revenue models that you can generate there? Are there new ways to invite communities into your spaces? Things never quite hit zero in terms of energy consumption overnight. So is there more that can be done from a sustainability perspective? I also really quickly at King's Place, I have independently benchmarked them. They're a really sophisticated operator. But we were able very quickly, just by looking at this, to start to understand much more about how they could be using their building and what's really going on. And we're now in a process of overlaying this data with occupancy and thermal comfort and CO2 data to then reveal more, which hopefully lots of you will connect with us after this and we'll be able to keep sharing insights.
You're what? Well, that was a lot to squeeze into half an hour. We've thrown a lot of things out there, and actually that's part of what we're doing. We're at the early stage of having these conversations with clients and potential clients, and it is about communicating internally to each other. So facilities understands what programming are doing. We also trying to understand how that connects with audiences and audience experience, and that's the so what. But the data is coming in from all sorts of different platforms at the moment. It says how we make sense of it. So we, as Ottilie said, welcome any questions, disagreements, encouragement after this and over the next couple of days. I did just want to show you this because it's a great sort of visualization. Charlotte Street, our Arup's Charlotte Street office in London opened 3 years ago, and it struggled a little bit with occupancy because it was shortly after COVID and we were hybrid working. It's a beautiful, big, but rather vacant space at that time. And so a colleague of ours, Julio, created this character, Charlotte, who is a personification or anthropomorphizing, of the building itself. And as Charlotte's character, her appearance alters depending on how many people are in the building. Which is nice because she was there in the entranceway. You could sort of get the climate of the building as you walked in. So her antenna, then it changes depending on who's on which floor. So you know where you're going to see people that day. Her fur colour changed according to her mood that was driven by the outside climate and the inside climate. It was really just a way to sort of visualise and give character to what was at the time a rather impersonal space.
But also, as you start to expose building data, which can be rather dry, it's actually a great way to start to pull out those stories and invite your audiences to collaborate and kind of demonstrate and further engage with, and get engaged and kind of care about your building, what happens during the day-to-day life of it. We have to stop, so we're going to go really fast. The technology is catching up. If you've got an iPhone, it probably has LIDAR scanning technology in it. Things aren't quite there yet. Lots of people are currently developing tools, and it's going to upset me as an IT professional because everybody's doing it in silos, and so we're going to have problems integrating things. I can see people nodding. We need to use this time to be really intentional as the technology catches up to understand what we want, because there is oodles of data there. There is more data coming. This is happening sort of wherever you stand on the issue. So we can be really intentional now to make sure that it's benefiting us and our goals. Very quickly, if you are interested in what we're talking about and would like to hear more, the Digital Twins Toolkit, which you can Google, is a really phenomenal resource for trying to develop your thinking on this if you are quite far advanced. If you are just starting out, we've also put some thought prompts together that can just help to start schedule thinking. So this is one of the final slides. Thank you very much for listening to us.